Warhammer The Horus Heresy, Eidolon The Auric Hammer by Mark Collins. Chapter 19, Soul and Memory. Light and shadow met, filling the confines of the warp space with fitful lightning. The weapon was not the true anathema. It possessed none of its coiled malice. The sentience that waited, coaxed into a nemesis edge. This was an echo, a shadow, an appropriate weapon for the thing that aped Eidolon's might and glory. Yet it was fast, potent with desperation, determined to fight and die rather than be reduced to a waiting phantom, desperate to reclaim the flesh. If Eidolon refused it, defeated it, what would become of it then? Would it linger and then seize some other brother's body? Each collision of weapons sent yet more maddened lightning flowing around its edges, catching on the facets of the space, as though it were some great jewel.
"I am all you could have been,"
it hissed. Eidolon drove it back, swinging his hammer in great killing arcs. It hit some imagined wall, and a new reality blossomed around them. The virus-spawned ashes of Istvan III pulled around their ankles, clung to them with a cloying need. Eidolon spat to one side and ducked away from another sword stroke. He looked around at the tableau of his living memory. Some was as he remembered: the frustration and stymied assaults, Lucius and his arrogant presumption, victory thanks to the machinations of another, motivated by nothing more than arrogance and pride, all for the chance to sit in glory. Honour and integrity had lost their lustre by then, but the hypocrisy of it yet rankled. He blinked and the image changed. He saw himself leading the defence, defiant before his fellows, loyal, as though the title meant anything.
"Roads not taken.
It burbled.
The warp's gift."
It swung for him with the shadow anathema, and the weapons met again in a screech of black lightning. The world convulsed. The ashes were suddenly the pall of black sand. Istvan V blossomed around them. He laughed and then let his throat sac swell. His scream cut across the new wonder and horror. He could hear it again. The song echoed about them, voiced from thousands of throats, carried in every last bolt round as they detonated. Every sword stroke and death, he channeled it and bound it in his scream, driving it through the demonic form it held as it came apart, carried on the ash wind, circling him like a cyclone as the images faded and shifted. Upon every facet of the warp prison, his life played out, as it was, as it could be. He saw himself distended and swollen by the Empyrean, rising on pinions of fire, howling his own apotheosis. Eidolon saw himself at the head of the Legion entire, crowned with Fulgrim's mark and the sigil of the Dark Prince. The sweep of his hammer was a trail of black fire. The walls of the palace were aflame under his advance. He saw himself casting dawn from the walls, triumphant as he did so, euphoric as he rose. The whisper of flame was at his back, and he spun. It reformed, a cackling shadow made of fire and hate. The shadow blade plunged. Eidolon roared in fury as it impaled him through his upper chest, pinning him to one of the false realities. Cracks spiderwebbed across the images, shattering them further, breaking apart each potential history into yet even more varied configurations. The demon soul grinned wolfishly and pushed harder. Crimson welled around the blade's edges, pouring through the rent in the armour, soaking his flesh with spilled lifeblood. Light flowed after it, draining away into the depths of the sword. Eidolon pushed himself up, tried to bring the hammer to bear, but its hand shot out and seized Eidolon's. Bones cracked in its grip, and he let go of the hammer.
"This,"
it whispered as it lifted the hammer reverently, watching Gloria Eterna shimmer with the fire of Eidolon's dying soul.
"This belongs to me. Everything you are, Lord Commander Primus, belongs to me."
It looked at Eidolon one last time, as though he were filth upon his boot, and then kicked the dying Lord Commander back into the flickering dust. They were bound in the dying dreamscape, caught by competing umbilicals of soul light and shadow. Seconds passed, metastasizing into minutes, As the demon form swelled and revitalized, a new fire kindled across the plates of its armor. It cascaded into new configurations, twisting and writhing, hands locked upon the hammer's haft. In one instant, it was a perfect creature, its armor the flawless work of master artificers, the weapon it held still beautiful. The next it had become truly demonic, the first steps along a road that would only end with them subsumed by the warp, burning with the black flame at creation's end, alive and undying in a way Eidolon could never be alone. He could feel his life ebbing away. The shadow blade had bitten deep, and Eidolon thought of Perturabo, his vitality stolen to fuel Fulgrim's ascent. His mind quested. Touching the dreamscape, glittering fragments began to rain around them. Eidolon blinked, forcing his breath through his teeth. The bounty of Prismatica drifted around them in eddies and drifts of brilliant iridescence, just as they had at the offering upon Idris. He sighed. Brilliant shards filled the skies. Eidolon let his mind soar, his memories coming alive. The frozen forests of Europa rose around him now. His rival, his opposite, was too distracted, glorying in the stolen life force, drawing Eidolon's power to it. Through it, Eidolon forced his hand, haltingly, and took hold of the anathema's hilt. "Who are you?" A voice burred from the infinite void around them, echoing between the petrified trunks. "When it matters, who are you? Will you lie down and die? Surrender? Merely the spare son of a dying lineage? Or will you fight, triumph, and rule?" He felt the memory become real once more, fingers closing around his chin, tilting his vision up. He almost laughed. "Become who you were always meant to be, my son." He knew the voice intimately. He expected, as his gaze tilted, to see the pale features of his father. There was only darkness, only pain. Eidolon knew that pain well, its presence as familiar as Fulgrim's hissing voice. He felt his fingers lock around the false anathema's hilt. Eidolon pulled the blade free and smiled his bloody smile. It turned a second too late. Eidolon threw himself forward, shoulder-charging the monstrous simulacrum into a waiting pillar, driving it through it. The stone shards and dust tumbled from its form, dousing the flames, turning the armor ash-grey. It hissed, and the demon bled through once more. Eidolon drove his boot down and pinned the hammer across its chest, trapping it.
"You have not earned this,"
He snarled. He dropped low and seized the hammer, pulling it back even as he drove the false sword down and through the Neverborn's chest, pinning it to the ground. New strength flooded through him, sanctifying him in the moment. He could take all of its power. He could be whole again. Eidolon paused. That was what all of this had been leading to. Whatever forces were manipulating them, whatever gods or demigods moved in the heavens, had arranged this. This was the end they desired. He looked down at the fragment of his soul, warp-sick and demented, screaming and howling its vengeance. Bloodshot eyes flickered and darted, seeking some final gambit, a last way out. Eidolon lifted his hammer.
"I dedicate this death,"
he whispered,
"to Slaanesh. I give myself to the Dark Prince. I would sacrifice anything for the right to lead. I give myself, soul severed and broken, to you, as long as the gods demand."
The hammer fell. The demon screamed. Everything quivered and came apart, shattering into so many spinning, glittering shards. The pasts and futures, the could have been, and the never were, died around him. Eidolon closed his eyes and began to scream as the fire flared bright and consumed them all. My God. That felt so dramatic. It felt like it just moved and kept going from moment to moment. I think genuinely that's one of the most... I think that's one of the best fights I've ever read, honestly. It felt like, even the bits that weren't fights, it just felt like it pulled you along. Like, I felt like I was in the drama. Mark Collins, you absolutely smashed it, my guy. Especially after the previous fight was stopped, this absolutely was like the showstopper in terms of fights. I wonder what's going to happen next. I think the next chapter is the longest we've had for a little while. It's also the last chapter. So, chapter 19 was the penultimate chapter. What's going to happen now? Because I've heard that in books like Lord of Excess that Eidolon is alive in Warhammer 40,000. But we don't know if he's still a space marine or if he's a demon prince. Is he a demon prince? He's not a demon prince at the end of the heresy, is he? I don't think he is. And again, my Horus Heresy knowledge is quite limited to basically what I've heard online, the bits of wikis I've read, and this book. I love this book, by the way. Mark, I'm gonna find more of your books and read more because, like, you're a great author. You're a great author, and I feel like you've absolutely smashed it. Eidolon's such a cool character. Like, I know a lot of people dislike him, and he's meant to be like a big villain of the Heresy era and an antagonist, but I think he's such an interesting character to explore, and I think you've done a fantastic job bringing him to the fore. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you want me to read next. If there's anything you think I could do better, please do say. I'm always looking for feedback and to try and improve and do these things better. Do the like and share and subscribe on all the social things. And to follow me in other places like Twitch. Come hang out in our streams. Come hang out in our Discord. Show me your minis. Chat nerdy to me. Like, yeah. Anyway, I love you all. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world, okay? Mwah. Mwah.